The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable. Good morning, Mitchell. Happy Saturday, my friend.
Morning, Edwin. How we doing?
Oh, it is a great day to be alive and have a conversation with a hero. So, yeah, it's a good way to start the day.
Couldn't have said any better, man. I'm excited to be here. It's great to see you again.
Well, you're a gentleman and a scholar, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes. We just got a text from our mutual friend Todd, who is up at 6 a.m. going on a run, and here we are, not quite that early, but we're still getting up, taking some action. So this is going to be a great conversation, Mitch. Just so the listeners know, I connected with Mitch recently at a Elevated Men's Summit hosted by Brian Pruitt, and that experience is always eye-opening and connecting in so many ways. But I think there was the spirit of a man there on a journey that really captivated me. So, Mitch, really, that's my first question for you is, what journey are you on right now, and what are you seeking? Let's start there.
Sure, it's a great question. Right now, I'm just to start off. I'm 25 years old, so I'm kind of in that middle portion of like your early life where you're trying to figure a lot of things out. Right now, I feel like to answer that question, I'm on a journey of kind of like realignment with purpose and identity. Um, a lot happened the past 11 years of my life that kind of pulled me away from some of my purpose and identity, getting into work and corporate life here. Um, I've taken a lot of time in my early 20s and my getting into my mid 20s to kind of realign myself with my purpose, my values, my identity, and what really makes me happy. And that's part of the reason why I was able to go to Brian's summit or was in the mind space to even take something on like that was to take something on to like realign myself with what I care about, put myself in a situation where I may be uncomfortable, learn new things, get to know new people, hear from people with different perspectives and different seasons of life, at different age groups. It was an incredible experience for me. So to answer the question, just on a journey of realignment with purpose and identity and recreating my values and what matters to me to push myself into the future part of my life.
Oh, that's a tremendous way to start the conversation, Mitch. So, if it's one question I get as a personal development coach more than any other, it comes from men in your age group, really age 25 to 45, even searching for purpose. And I know the listeners have heard me say this over and over again, searching for purpose as if it is a destination on a map. So my curiosity goes, Mitch, you said the word realignment with your purpose. It feels like listening to you that you already know your purpose, and I'm curious how you know that at your age, or what what path that you were stepping on keyed you into what your purpose was, if that's a fair question.
Yeah, totally. Um, I guess I just have always been somebody who's stuck with things that I care about. And that's always aligned me directly with my purpose. And when I said realignment, it was just because oftentimes we get thrown in situations where we may forget who we are or what our real purpose is here on life. But my purpose to me is to serve others and to use things that I'm passionate about to do so. I've always been super interested in sports and fitness, and I've really taken that on again the past 3 years. I've been on a pretty cool journey with doing some triathlon, doing a lot of fitness stuff outside of that. Went on a solo hiking trip out in Canada. Just really digging deep into that side of myself, but doing all of that to realign myself with who I am and what I care about, so I can be a better person to serve others. I think that's a lot of what human beings are put on this earth to do, is to become our best versions of ourselves and create our own identity, and then use that identity to help others around us become better people.
Oh, those are such cool words. I am a firm believer that self-awareness is the first step on that journey. And clearly, at some point, you pause to recognize your giftedness, i.e., your strengths, and that's what you're investing in. Uh, uh, why are we missing that as the first step? And let's talk about your age group in particular. Why is the looking and longing outside of self versus recognition of what the giftedness already is within you?
I asked myself that question a ton. I think it's just getting wrapped into situations, circumstances that we get ourselves into. We may not even know why or how, but oftentimes we surround ourselves with people who might not be aligned with things that we truly care about or take the time to be self-reflective and figure out what we even do care about. So then we're floating through portions of life, we're floating through situations, we're floating through circumstances where we are just kind of one with the wind. We don't really even know what we're doing. We really don't even know who we're around or why we're there. And we're just kind of reacting. We're not being proactive. And so taking the time to figure out what it is you truly care about, taking the time to be, a lot of that for me has been through taking time for myself to be alone with fitness. Running has been huge for me. Um, Going on trips where I'm by myself. I had that alone time to figure out like, what do I want to do with my time? What do I want to do with myself? Where am I? What do I care about? What interests me? What doesn't interest me? Just making sure you're purposeful in the situations that you put yourself in, for me, is how you figure out what you really care about. And the lack of purpose is what does the opposite. Um, just kind of floating through life a little bit and surrounding yourself in situations and circumstances where you don't even really know what you're doing. Um, it takes time and effort to figure out that you're even in a situation like that.
Yeah, so distractions
Yeah,
come to mind listening to you talk. Who did I hear say recently that
totally.
attention is the new currency? Um, Look at all the things that distract us from the one thing that's screaming at us within, and we're refusing to hear is the voice that's speaking to us most of the time, and that might be in the negative actually, and we'll get to how the brain works a little bit later in this conversation perhaps, but there's another voice in your head that's speaking value and love and honor and service into into your thoughts, and we just don't hear it because of all the other distractions. I'm curious, Mitch, when you're running, is clearly that's when distractions tend to be removed from your attention. Where does your mind go when you're running? Is it future thinking? Is it past remembering, or is it present focus of what your next steps are, literally and figuratively, while you're running?
Yeah, it's kind of all of that. Running is crazy in that sense where your brain just kind of has a non-linear, at least my brain does, a non-linear way of thinking. It's just a bunch of jumbled thoughts that you kind of have to make sense of while you're on this journey of however long or far you're running. Um, and for me, that's my favorite part about it is like the mental game of fitness, the mental game of running is you have all these jumbled thoughts of things that may have come from your past, maybe identified with your future, maybe in the present state, whatever circumstance or situation you're in life. These things just kind of come up while you're on this journey of a fitness journey. And it's your job to kind of figure out along that run, one, to not quit and not allow these things to stop you from getting to where you said you were going to go, but two, to maybe make sense of them or to decide to not make sense of them and just kind of shut them down, which a lot of the time is if you're in a race, that's what you're forced to do is kind of shut your brain down. Sometimes it works against you. It tries to convince you to stop, but knowing that you're more powerful than some of the thoughts that may come into your head, you're more powerful than some of the situations that you may be thinking about, whether they're in your past or in your future or in your present state. Knowing that those things don't define you, and for me, exercise does a really cool way is a really cool way of working through stuff like that. Knowing that this thought is just a thought. This situation, if it's in the past, is done with. It doesn't affect where I'm at right now. And I can't allow this thought to stop me from getting to where I said I was going to go with this little journey of maybe one run or one training program or a 12-week program or whatever it is you may be on. It forces you to just realize that, like, these things oftentimes in our brain become something that we allow ourselves to limit us, but they can't stop you if you don't let them. And that's
That is so powerful. So let's sit there for just a minute, Mitch, because I'm also a firm believer that in those moments that you mentioned, we have a response ability to that thought to either be a victim or a victor. And a lot of people are victims to their own thoughts, and those negative thoughts shape their reality.
totally.
How have you been able to, more often than not, not fall prey to the victim thoughts and champion through those? Because I think that paralyzes so many young men your age.
It does. And I'm definitely not perfect at it. But just realizing that we can allow the mistakes or the choices of others to I create an own identity in us, and being able to pull yourself away from things that may have been done to you. Like you said, not being a victim to your circumstances, realizing that things don't happen to you, they happen for you, and using anything, whether it's negative or positive. To me, it's all positive. You learn more, at least from my experience in life. I've learned so much more from the things that probably would be called negative to others, and just realizing that life is a journey. It's not just a day by day thing. I mean, you have to show up day by day to get through it, but the lessons are a lifelong journey. And being able to have that long term mindset is what helps me not become a victim or not realize that I am the person who things happen to. I don't ever want to fall into that mindset because, like you said, it does happen a lot in my age group, and it can be paralyzing. Like you said, it can stop people from, once again, going back to their purpose. It can completely pull people apart from their purpose, their goals, their ambitions. So the more you can realize that things don't happen to you, they happen for you, that you're not a victim to your circumstances, that you have the ability to change any situation you might be in. If you don't like where you are, you can change it. Um, and it all comes from the mindset to me, and just training that muscle over and over again. And that comes back to just showing up every day, creating a plan, sticking to it. Oftentimes it's hard to figure out what your plan even might be, but the best thing to do is just action.
Wow. Okay. So we're gonna have to back this recording up and listen to that multiple times. There was just absolute gold in there, Mitch. Yeah. Let's talk about mindset first. You said mind is a muscle. How have you exercised that such that you're prepared for those situations that are not only circumstantial and outside of you, right? Your experiences. How do you guard against that and train your mindset to see what's really happening and then make the pivot? And then the follow-up question to that is obviously granted on based on neuroscience, most of the thoughts in our mind are negative in nature. How do you shape how do you shape your mindset and your internal thoughts to again not fall prey to that and to see the positive or the action step in those moments?
For me, it's faith. A lot of the time, it falls to me on faith, knowing that there's a reason why I'm going through or may have been presented a situation that to me is negative, but in the long run, I have faith that things will be positive, and that I'm put in situations and circumstances that will benefit me in the long run. That's a huge thing for me. I've been able to really lean into that the past. I've been through a lot, and I've been put in a lot of situations and circumstances that have been forced me to either become a victim or do the exact opposite, quite honestly. And I had the ability to see through the mistakes of others and being observant that I didn't want to be the things that were happening to me in my life. I didn't want to be the situations that I was put into, and tying that back into the self-identity piece, knowing that I have the ability to choose to not be in those situations and to not allow those to define me, and then just making daily choices and daily habits, creating healthy habits that align with the outcomes that I want.
Wow. Okay. So there's a vision component there. There's a gratitude component there. There are a lot of components there that are brilliant. And I'm going to get there. So so you said another word that was really impactful, and that was identity. I feel like a lot of young men your age are seeking identity rather than and again, that external conversation, they're looking for their identity outside of themselves. Um, and in light of your circumstances, you've created your own identity. That's a creative process. Tell me about that, and if did it happen intentionally or by accident?
Super
Let's start there.
intentional. Yeah, super
Okay.
intentional. Um, I've always just been like, I don't know, I've always been a very observant person, and I've always been able to figure out, or at least tried my hardest to figure out why people do certain things. Why do people try and hurt other people? Why do people try and put their negativity or their emotion onto other people? Why do they do these things? I don't know, but maybe I can take some time to reflect on that. And for me, that's really aligned me with what I want to do when I feel emotional or I feel like I'm in situations that are hard. Um, and I know that that may not be a direct answer to the question, but trying to relate that all back to what do I want to do with my life? How can I be intentional on how I show up and how I treat others? And aligning that with my actions and realizing that every opportunity to do something is an opportunity to change the way that you show up in the world and changing the way that you show up to others, how you can become a leader or how you can become somebody who others look up to. Creating my identity was really just pursuing things that I cared about. And this part for me, I struggled a lot with feeling like I was being judged by others for pursuing things that I care about a lot of the time and allowing that to define me for a moment of my life. But then maturing and realizing that we're all here on this journey. We're all just trying to figure out what makes us happy and what brings us purpose and what brings us joy. And at the end of the day, to me, that's really all that matters. If you're able to figure out what makes you happy and do that, I think you'll attract the right things if you put yourself in the right room, the right situations. And I started doing this, and it kind of became like magnetic, where I was like, screw it. I'm just going to go after my things that I care about. I don't care what anybody says. It's an essential step, I think, that needs to be taken for everybody that does want to create a strong sense of identity. And then you just start actioning and you start doing it over and over again. And these things become bigger than you could ever imagine. And you're put in rooms like with the elevated men summit that we were at, where I don't know if I would have created the amount of action that I've done in the past 3, 4 years, if I would be comfortable doing something like that 4 years ago. But I stuck to it. I was disciplined to the journey. I knew in my gut that this was the right thing for me to do as a person to figure out who I really am and what my identity really is. And then once you figure that out, you can overcomplicate it in your head and feel like you have to have this perfect plan to start actioning. But you just got to start actioning. Um, don't be somebody, I struggle with this so much too, is trying to create a perfect plan on how this journey could look and try and create like so many outcomes. And what if I do this? And then if I don't do this, where does it go? Just do and see what happens. And I started doing that, and a lot changed for me.
Yeah, I was hoping we would get here in this conversation because that resonates with me personally, but it's also, I think it's another common factor I see that young men your age, and I don't know the origin of it and how it happens, but when they're trying to architect the vision that is in their head or the purpose or their identity, that the actions that they take or the next action and every other subsequent action after that has to be perfect. And there's so much gravity and weight associated with the next step that they fail to take it. And therefore, there's no subsequent step and there's no momentum. There's only stuck and there's only stagnant. And that becomes a reality. It becomes their environment. It becomes the nature of their thinking and then the quality of their actions at that point. And they're lost and they're suffering. And unfortunately, some men your age and my age make the wrong decision in response to that to check out of that
Mhm.
environment. Um, so I'd love your perspective on that, maybe the question that I'm asking is why is there an aversion to risk in just taking a step and realizing that purpose is found on the journey, not architected before?
Yeah, it's a really awesome question, and would love to just kind of think on that for a little bit. I think it's a big shortcoming of society and the way that we set up the way that we all live is thinking that like life is in the situations, whether it's education or I don't know, the path for athletes. I think thinking that things are linear and everybody's so aligned with this idea that things have to be linear and that you do this to get to this, you do this to get to this, you do this to get to this. to me, my experience, that is not the case. And that is not how the things that I've considered to be the biggest successes in my life so far went through a route like this. And it was way more like this than it was like this. And I think we can get so attached to that idea that things have to be linear and there has to be a perfect process and kind of being perfectionists that when things get out of skew and they get out of line, it blows us up and we don't know what to do or how to react. And the more that we can kind of flex the muscle and relax into things might be more like this, the more susceptible we are and the better we are at dealing with change, dealing with adversity, dealing with shortcomings, understanding that just because I didn't have the perfect path doesn't mean I'm a failure. Just because this didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go, I failed. You only really, in my opinion, you fail when you stop or when you quit. You continue to show up, you can continue to try new things. There's different ways to get to the same objective. So for me, that's what my brain immediately goes to is just like that. We all oftentimes think that things have to be so linear and so strict, like strict and structured, but that's not really how life is.
Yeah, it's almost like an aversion to failure
Yeah.
that I, I, I I think I fell prey to that early on, that my identity was attached in academic performance, right? So therefore failure was not an option, and even a B, a C, a D, or an F was unacceptable. That the more A's I got, the more love I got, right?
Mhm.
And therefore, if there was anything other than an A, then my identity took a hit, and I didn't make the pivot away from that for some time until I read John Maxwell's book on failure. It was called Failing Forward, and I did not understand that concept. That was a brand new concept for me, that there is no success without failure, and that failure is your learning opportunity. So if it's perfection you seek, you will never learn. And that was just mind-boggling to me when I read that. Um, Gosh, I guess I was already into college before I appreciated that, and started having those life struggles that high school didn't prepare me for. And man, failure was a slap in the face. I'm curious, when did you pivot to see the that linear was not the way forward, that the journey is more rich and meaningful with a jagged approach?
I don't think it was necessarily a choice for me. I think a lot of the things that I went through as a young kid, family wise, I was pushed into situations where it was not linear. Um, don't need to get into too many details there, but just a lot of things in my life were taken by day approach just to get through some things. And I went through, my parents split up when I was 11 years old in 2011. And that led to me having to be redistricted in a town where I was transferred to a new middle school. Had to meet friends, which once again, coming back to fitness, a lot of my identity always relates back to sports and fitness. That's how I met a lot of friends. That's how I always created relationships, was through success in sports. So was kind of thrown off since 2011 into a phase of life where things are less linear and they don't look like the normal, if that's even a thing, the normal life. And then I go to college. I go to a different high school actually after middle school. I go to a new high school in a new town that I wasn't supposed to go to because I had been redistricted and had met all these friends. The last 2 years of my middle school experience, still great guys, talk to them all the time. And then college for me was a heck of an experience. I actually transferred 2 times. So I went to the University of Alabama my freshman year. Had some success there, but just didn't feel like I was really aligned to my identity, my purpose. Could tell that it wasn't necessarily the best environment for me to be successful in school. So decided to make a transition to the Ohio State University back in Columbus, my hometown. Um, and once again, just like didn't find home there. Wasn't maybe the best circumstance for me to feel like I was having the personal, professional education level that I wanted. I kind of wanted that whole connection, the whole thing. And so I made one more transfer to the Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Ended up going to 3 different colleges, graduated in 4 years with a degree in sociology, and then graduated and moved to Chicago. So for me, my whole life has kind of just been like this abnormal, non-linear process, and I've had to just kind of let that be okay. And there was a point in time where I did try to control it, and I let those things like, wow, I am really going off the beaten path here. Am I losing my mind? Is this crazy? Is this the worst thing I could ever do for myself? And just kind of as I've gotten older and reflected on that experience, just realized that like I still got what I needed to get done in 4 years. I still met awesome people along the way. I have better relationships for it. I have better interpersonal skills for it. I've met new people. I've talked to people from different experiences. Most people have such a siloed experience because they're in this structure of how they think things are supposed to go. And my self-identity and my confidence grew so much from being pushed out of this normal path. And that's kind of what just created this mindset that like things don't have to be how everybody says they have to be. And that's all right. And you're probably going to find out that you're more capable, you're more powerful, you're more able to do things that you never thought you could do once you just start actioning on new things and new experiences. And it just gave me like this incredible self reflection, self identity, confidence. And that's been a
Yeah,
blast.
yeah, it just sounds like risk has become maybe a superpower for you. You know how to wield it in this world such that it brings you the insights necessary for the vision that allows you to take those next steps more confidently. I'm curious, Mitch, one of my mentors, John Maxwell, told me, oh gosh, it was probably 8 years ago when I think I came with the question that was founded or based in a victim mindset. He said, "What are you going to give up in order to go up?" And I I didn't understand in that moment what he was saying. I was looking for an answer, not a question right back at me. And I think it's such a powerful question that that which holds us down and holds us back is actually a weight that can be removed from you that gives you the ability to step forward and take risk. Saying all that, Mitch, I'm curious, what have you let go of um, or given up in order to go up?
Really powerful question. Um, a lot of it has been one, just the idea of perfection, the idea of I need to be a perfect version of myself all the time. Realizing that all the things that you learn in life are through the failures and the mistakes. So that for me was really hard. Being somebody who played a lot of sports and like you talked about with your education, having all of your identity in the results, that was something that was really, really hard for me. And I honestly learned that after I graduated college, I started working in the professional world. That like perfection is not how this whole thing works. Oftentimes it's way more just figure it out on the fly type of thing. But as an athlete, you're just predicated on your results and whether you win or lose, and that's it. So shedding that weight. Um, Also a big thing for me has been community and shedding. This is probably the hardest one for me is shedding people in your life who don't serve you and taking time to reflect on who is aligned with my value. It comes back to how we started the conversation for me and who is aligned with my values, who is aligned with my purpose, what I care about in life, who has my best interest at heart, who wants me to succeed, and anybody outside of that can't be a part of the equation. It's just not something that's going to help me. It's going to hold me back, and it's really hard to action on. But the more you lean into it, I feel like the easier it becomes because you start to just the more you lean into it, you figure out who you truly are, and it becomes more and more evident that people who aren't like that maybe shouldn't be surrounded by you. So that for me was probably the hardest part was like losing some of those key relationships that I had for so much of my life that I kind of just outgrew and separated from.
I hear you there because I think if we're talking about your age group, right? And I'm remembering back to being that age that your ride or die crew was part of your identity,
Totally.
right? And when you make the shift and the choices that are taking you in a new path, that those same people can be some of the anchors that are holding you back, because here you are trying to launch
Yep.
and become, and they're not there yet. They're not on the journey you are, there's a resistance there, and there's a comfort there in staying the same. It's interesting now knowing your personality type on the disc spectrum. I can almost see where it is easier for you, and this might be an oversimplification of a personality style, but it might be easier for you to let go because the pull is stronger going up than the anchor holding you back. Is that a fair statement?
100% yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. So Mitch, I guess I want to go here real quick. Also, understanding your personality profile, there's a ego component to someone like you. Um, and there's an ego component to everybody. I'm not saying you're the ego problem, Mitch, but we all have an ego, and we all are in battle with it a lot. But someone who's a DC, I'll go ahead and just name it out there. There's a high ego component over your journey over the last few years, in particular. How have you kept ego in check such that it's not driving your actions that we've talked to before?
Biggest thing is faith again, for me, knowing that I'm not really the guy in the driver's seat here, and knowing that I'm here to serve a better purpose, and using the second part of it is using the things that I do care about and the things that do drive my ego, the things that get me out of bed in the morning, get me excited and make me feel good about myself, using those things and trying to sharpen those tools to then serve and help other being people get to where they can feel a certain way about themselves, and kind of just leaning more into like the service aspect of it and how it can help me become, I think, the best thing that I can do as a friend, as a son, as somebody who wants to become a father at some point in life, is take care of myself and better myself, because it allows me to show up better for others. So it did when I first started doing a lot of this, like the triathlon training, and it was taking me away from some of these friendships. It felt like it was a selfish endeavor, but I've come to realize that me taking care of myself allows me to be a better version of myself for others. And to me, that's like where like it separates from the ego. Is like I'm not necessarily sure I'm doing this for me. Of course I am. I want to do these things so I can feel proud of myself and have these accomplishments to talk about. But it also helps me become a better servant to the people around me and the people that I care about.
Hmm. There's a word coming to mind, Mitch, in listening to you talk, and that is surrender. It it sounds like you've surrendered to something other than your ego, and I believe it's a higher power. You've surrendered to not being in control, and that surrender has allowed you to give up the complication that the ego brings to our human existence. I'm curious your journey of surrender, and how that's shaped you up to this point.
It shaped me entirely. It's completed like the circle of my identity and my peace of mind. I got to a point in my life where so many things were happening all at once, and I was put in a situation where I was like, "This is I." I think that I'm a pretty strong person. I think that I can deal with a lot and get through a lot of things, but I can't do all of this by myself, and I'm alone and I don't know who else to go to. And I was exactly that moment of surrender. Like there's got to be something that can handle this for me on my behalf at all times. And started really, really leaning into that and focusing on it and trying to just be as open-minded to that as possible and allowing that to creep into my life in different ways, and just literally telling myself in moments where I was overwhelmed, like just surrender and see what happens. And started doing that, made a habit out of it, and life's changed. So totally it's completed my identity, I think, and it's allowed me to just really step into like who I want to become, and has opened up so much like mental bandwidth for me that I thought that I had to control all of these situations and be the guy who was like creating the narrative and helping solve these problems, but I don't, and I don't have to do that. And having that resolve has been huge for me.
Yeah, and again, going back to your personality style, that is not easy for someone of your personality type where details matter so much and alignment and connecting dots and the driven component of the high D and the high C. Man, surrender cannot be easy. And why then do so many people fight surrender and control when surrender is the answer? That's a big
It's
question.
a big question, and I ask myself it a ton. And there's so many times where it's human nature to be like, I want to control everything. I think that that's like our instinct is like control, control, control. I can do this. I can figure this out. I'm capable of everything. It's not always the case. And I find myself so often wanting to, like you talked about with my personality type, to understand everything, all the details, get all the answers. I don't have them. And the more I just like lean into the fact that like I don't have them for so many different situations. I'm 25 years old. I'm going to go through a lot in life where I don't know what is happening, and just being okay with that. Just becoming okay with I don't have to know all the time. And even if I don't know, I can still show up and do the things that I said I was going to do, despite being in a situation where I'm not comfortable. I don't know what's happening. I have zero control. That, what to me was the most profound experience of the Elevated Men Summit, was like, I even wrote down in my journal before I went, what will this do for me? And wrote down, it will strip me of my ability to control things. I was just a passenger in that experience. I couldn't figure out, I didn't know, I didn't get to cook my next meal. I didn't get to do all these things that I typically, like you do throughout a day, where you know that you're in the person who, like, if I get hungry, I can cook. I don't know if I was going to be able to, those type of things where you don't have control and you surrender to it, and then all these amazing things happen, and you realize that like the more you allow things to flow through you and not feel like you have to control them, it's a weight lifted off your shoulders. You have so much more, like, you're so much more relaxed, and it's just amazing. And then you just start trying new things, and you kind of take that mindset into different phases of life, different opportunities, different ventures. And I look forward to wherever I'll go in the future with this new mindset that I've kind of created the past couple of years, and see where it takes me. But it's a long-winded answer to a short question, but it was a deep question, so I feel like I wanted to answer it pretty well.
No, that is so good. And I had a similar surrender experience at the summit as well. It wasn't related to food because I knew who was coming to cook for us, and I knew we would
Good
not
food.
be left wanting. But it was the exercise, right? Here I am, almost 55, and people 25 years my junior are much better prepared for the trauma that we were experiencing at the event. And there were those surrender moments in breath work in the morning, like you don't know what's coming, the beach workout, going into the ocean. What? Who does that? All of those aspects were unnerving for me, but it was a moment of surrender to just let it go and see what value you were going to receive in the process of experiencing it. And man, you couldn't imagine the beauty of the sunrise, the feel of the water, the movement of air in your lungs, the camaraderie of all suffering together, the tug of war where yes, I beat Brian Pruitt. But anyway, I just want to put that out there. Um, so it brings me to this question, Mitch. Um, could anybody have told you with the simple words, Mitch, just let it go, dude. Just let it go. I- Is surrender, why isn't surrender that easy? Why is surrender so confusing so that when you receive those words, you go, what do you mean surrender? What? I don't understand. What,
Yeah,
how is that translated?
I think you kind of just answered it honestly. Immediately, you have to be ready to receive something like that. You have to be ready to receive advice like that. I think if you're not in a mindset where you're open to change, or you're open to advice, and you want to be somebody that just controls and thinks you have it all figured out, you're not going to take advice from people. You're not going to take somebody telling you just let it go. But if you're in a state of mind where like you're open to advice, you're open to change, you're maybe at a point like a breaking point, or you're in a stage of life where you are there and simple words like that can impact you. Maybe somebody telling you let it go is going to be enough. But if you're not there, you know, that's why it takes time and everybody's journey is different. You can't compare your journey to other people's journeys and you can't judge other people for where they're at in life because it's just a matter of time before people hit a certain mark where they're open to something like that. I think everybody would come around to it at some point in their life. Um, Mine, I felt like maybe a little bit earlier than others, and that's fine. I have faith and trust that everybody that I care about will have moments of surrender and hopefully will open up new parts of their personality and new parts of their life. But just being ready to receive is a big part of it. At least with my experience, that was totally it. I was closed-minded to stuff like that and thought that I had control with my personality, and then had that experience where I was like, I don't have control. Okay, maybe I should start taking some advice from people and open up my mind to that. And people telling me stuff like that became more something I was willing to implement in my life and give a shot, and ended up being true.
I think that's a critical component, Mitch, that if our receivers aren't turned on, the message is going to land flat. So if I had caught you at, 20 and said, "Oh, Mitch, just give it up, dude. You're fighting too hard. You're trying to control everything. Just give it up." It may not have landed well. And it reminds me of Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is Key. He's the Stoicism guru, and it is such a powerful book that if if we just sit still and if we breathe and if we listen, the clues and cues are there. We're just distracted by noise. So he refers to all the great Stoic philosophers, but you could also look at Jesus going into the desert and just finding stillness and quietness in order to process and understand. So he's ready to receive. I think that is probably this is the first time I've connected the dots. So thank you, Mitch, for that. That turning our receivers on, or optimizing our receivers to be ready for those messages come from being quiet first. So yeah, thanks for that epiphany moment that I just had. I'm gonna have to write that down and process that, Mitch, a little bit more, but that was brilliant. Um, Mitch, you've been on some pretty cool journeys, I would say, following your Instagram feed. I want to talk about the triathlon just a little bit, and I also want to talk about your mountain journey in Vancouver. That clearly on the journey you made some self-discoveries, maybe. Yes, they were both physical feats that tested you physically. I'm curious about the mental battles that you went through on those particular two journeys and what you learned about yourself on the journey. Anything
Sure.
new?
Yeah, I think one helped the other. My success in one of them helped my success in the other one, which is a cool part of it. Um, But for me, I did a 12-week training program for my triathlon. I've always, for the past couple of years, I've been running. I've had a pretty awesome experience with running the past 5, 6 years. My dad was a big runner growing up, so we used to sit and watch triathlons and Lance Armstrong and all these really, really awesome athletes that I always looked up to as a kid. Um, when COVID shut down the world in 2021, my dad drove up to my University of Miami, and they were doing any races, so he brought a can of spray paint and he spray painted mile markers on a country road. And we did my own first half marathon that I'd ever done. So that was my introduction to like running and racing. Just a little tangent. But with the triathlon, I did a 12-week training program living here in Chicago, Illinois, downtown. I did the Chicago triathlon. So I decided to sign up for one that was local so I could train and work in the environment. Having a full-time job too was something I had to juggle. So making sure I was in an environment where I could both do well and work and not fall behind, but also stay on top of my training and handle all those things all at once. It made it easy to be in the environment that I was doing my racing. So that was one thing, is like really getting to work on that mental muscle of like planning and creating a plan, taking time to create like a structure of how I wanted this whole 12 weeks to go so I could be disciplined to it. I could stay with it. I could, at the end of the day, whether I succeeded or I failed, I could know that I created a plan. If I was disciplined to that plan, I could be happy with the result no matter what. That was a big thing for me that I learned about just like the idea of creating a plan and sticking to it. Was able to do that through 12 weeks and then realizing that for me, the most like profound experience that I learned from doing the triathlon was that the beauty is in the journey. The lessons are in the training. Race day is just such a little microcosm of the experience that if you show up and you train hard enough and you stick to a good plan, the results are going to take care of themselves and you won't have to really worry about that. So on race day, I wasn't really worried that I was going to get it done. I was confident. I had done those things multiple times. I had hit the distances that I needed to hit multiple times in order to know that when I show up on race day, as long as my nutrition's in check, that's a big part of it. There's so many things that go into the triathlon that's so cool. I could talk about that for hours on by itself, but um, knowing that like if you prepare hard and you are disciplined to a plan and you show up early and often consistently, things are going to take care of themselves and you'll end up in a better situation than you were in before. Um, and was able to do that. Brought my family together, which was a really cool experience with that. Both my mom and dad came into town. Some other extended members of my family came into town. A bunch of my friends and family were there. So once again, just kind of figuring out who my tribe is, who my people are that are in my corner, who shows up for me on big days in my life. That was a really cool experience. You don't really get that unless you put yourself outside of your comfort zone. You could sit there in your mind and think about who's in my corner, who's in my corner. But if you put yourselves in hard situations and invite people who you care about, and if they show up, there's your answer. Like those people are in my corner. So that was a really, really awesome experience that I'll never forget. Outside of the race, I didn't expect that to be the case. Um, Led that into my triathlon for me, having grown up an athlete playing sports my whole life. I knew that I could physically do hard things, that like I'm able to do that. So fitness for me, not to say that it was easy by any means, it's not, and I hope to do more of it in the future. But after my triathlon experience, I wanted to get into like how can I use this to grow into a different avenue. And for me, that was like traveling into a new country by myself, off by my own, in a situation that I have once again surrendering to a completely new situation, circumstance. I have hardly any control besides making a plan and sticking to it. I decided to make a trip to Vancouver, British Columbia, and planned out 2 hikes that I could do. Bought a flight and flew out the next week to go to Vancouver and stayed in an Airbnb by myself. Went on these 2 hikes, met some really, really cool people on the mountains that were also solo travelers and had these amazing experiences. It's funny you bring up Ryan Holiday. I ended up having a book that Courage is Calling, if you're familiar with that one, that I brought with me on my trip just to read through while I was at the top of the mountain. I'm sitting there reading this book, and this girl comes up to me on top of the mountain, and I introduce myself, tell her I'm a solo traveler from the States, and that I came here to kind of push myself outside of my comfort zone and wanted to just try new things. And she ended up saying that it was her 30th birthday, that she had had a really, really hard and rough couple years in her past 4 years of her life, and she wanted to do the same thing, get out of her comfort zone, try to accomplish a goal that she hasn't done in a long time. Solo hiked this mountain with me, but not together. Got there about 30 minutes after me to the peak of the mountain. And her and I had this really, really cool, deep life conversation about like getting out of our comfort zones and how it leads us to feeling good about ourselves and how it leads us to so many other things. And I could tell that she needed a little bit of extra push on top of this mountain. So I ended up gifting her that book.
Wow.
And she took it with her and it was pretty meaningful for her. So just little connections like that was just such a cool experience that I never expected to have come from, once again, just like a little trip that I made. And it becomes so much more than you ever think it could. I wanted to go and just try something new. And all of these beautiful and life lessons and really cool experiences just come to you if you're in a mindset where your receivers are on, you're open to having those conversations, you're open to talking about those type of things, and you want to get out of your comfort zone. So many of us crave that. Human beings crave that. We just get caught up in day to day that if you're somebody who can do it and you're open to it, and it might not feel good, you might feel scared, you might feel uncomfortable, feel the fear and do it anyway is a lesson that I've learned too. Like it's okay to be fearful. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to have anxiety about new things. but it's not okay to not do them because you have those things.
Okay, yeah, there's another rewind moment. Yeah, wow, 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 wow. So I heard it said once that feelings aren't truth. So when you feel the fear, it's informing you, and then you get to choose what you do with that information. It doesn't mean you have to respond to it accordingly. Fear, play it safe. No, fear, this might be an opportunity to take a risk. Let me go then do that rather than not. Wow. That is so beautiful, and that's so impressive that you gifted her the book that had your curiosity. And I guess it begs the question, Mitch, where is courage calling you right now?
Ooh, really great question. Well, one, it's leading me to this conversation. This is something that's completely new for me. So grateful that you asked me and gave me an opportunity to come on your show, and just kind of talk with you. This is where it's led me. This is new for me. I feel those same things that I felt when I booked that solo trip before this meeting. And once again, just like not allowing it to control me. But now courage is calling me to take a look at where I am in life and with my current job situations, what I want to do with my time here, what I want to pour myself and my soul and my story into, and how I want to use that to create a future for me, a career for me. I'm kind of in this little gray zone of having a lease that ends in April and having an opportunity to maybe make a move out of the city that I currently live in and maybe start something new. So I'm kind of looking for opportunities that can align me with my purpose, my values, what I care about to create something that can really give me a strong sense of success, and also a strong sense of purpose. And I think a lot of that's going to take me once again getting out of my comfort zone and asking people and trying to create opportunities. But I'm also in a phase where courage is kind of taking me to trust the process and have faith and just figure things out. I don't know exactly where things are going to look like in the next 6 months, but I know that I can control what I can control, and just getting clear on that is where courage is starting to lead me towards. So this conversation helps me figure out that. Um,
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. And I guess I see at some point somebody on the same top of that mountain reading your story, right? They're on a journey and they've aligned so much, or been inspired by you that they buy your book, and they're now reading it. I'm curious, Mitch, what would the title of that book be
of my book,
that they're reading? Yeah.
I've thought about this before, so I've had the opportunity to think through that. I would say I would title my book um, Hard Way, like learning things the hard way. Has kind of been a lesson that I've had to deal with throughout life is learning lessons through hard circumstances, quote unquote, hard things that people identify as being difficult. Um, I would love for that to be the title of my book is Hard Way.
Wow. What's the name of chapter one?
Chapter one would be Build a Foundation.
So good. All right. Well, I'm going to be that person reading that book on top of the mountain. So get to writing, sir. That's going to be a bestseller for sure. Mitch, I want
Thank
to be respectful of your time. We've been talking almost an hour. I could keep going for sure. Um, um, I I think I would love for people to know how they can follow your journey. What would be the best way for people to connect with you if your words resonated and they just want to reach out? How can they do that?
Honestly, I don't have a huge presence on social media right now, but I'm trying to maybe get to a phase where I can build that up. My Instagram is just Mitch Canaday, first and last name, and Canaday is spelled Canada with a Y at the end. I think TikTok is something I'm going to start trying to create some more content there. I've always had intentions of creating content, posting videos and photos of just like mindset stuff that I deal with while I'm running. I kind of want to get into doing some stuff like that. And my TikTok is Mitchell Canaday, Mitchel. Um, Hopefully I'll build out a presence here in the next 6, 7 months where people can find that a little bit easier. That's kind of the goal that I have is to start leaning into that more. Or yeah, those are probably the best places to read me. I don't use Twitter or Snapchat, any of those social media things, but Instagram and TikTok are probably the best places to find me.
Excellent. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. Mitch, this has been such a life-giving conversation for me, and I know the listeners are going to resonate with your story, your journey, and your message. So thank you. I receive it all, and I can't wait for the listeners to get a hold of this episode and the number of times they're going to have to rewind to hear and be still with what you said. I think you are at the age of 25. You're wise. You're going to be a profound transformational leader in this world, and you're going to make waves with the actions that you take. So, bless you, brother. I'm so glad our paths connected, and that I'm able to share part of your message because you're going to have to come back and share more of it. So, man, thanks so much for the time today.
They're super grateful to have cross paths with you, Edwin. You're an amazing guy. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to come on here and talk. And obviously, we're going to stay in touch and talk a ton. So thanks again. Really appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch.